Which of the following comes closest to the narrator's estimate of postmodernist art? Option A says, it is nihilism that is designed to shock the viewers out of their complacency. It ends up shocking even those that are far from complacent. Now, just one small part of this is true or aligned with the passage, that postmodernist art is designed to shock the viewers. This is something that we can see from the end of the first and the second paragraphs. It is mentioned here. Recently, however, art has taken on a new form known as postmodernism, which in too many instances has served as little more than shock aesthetics, outrageous sensory stimuli created to provoke the psychological processes. We also see it here. What can be said for sure is that postmodern art has gone too far in stirring controversy and shocking its audience for it to any longer be considered art. That said, it is nihilism is an exaggeration. It can be called a distortion because we see that here, this is not universally stated. Many scholars and artists alike believe this new art movement to be nihilistic and at times gratuitous. So that said, this is the belief of many scholars and artists. It is not a defining point. It is not definitively stated. So we cannot say that postmodernist art is actually nihilistic. It is believed by many scholars, artists, experts to be nihilistic. First off. Second, the aspect of complacency is completely outside the premise. It ends up shocking even those that are far from complacent. There's no mention of complacency in the audiences, at least, because we see that the aspect of complacency is connected to viewers of or the audiences, one can say, of art. They are not mentioned to be complacent. There is an aspect of complacency inferable, which we see in the context of the curators and art directors. We see it here in the fourth paragraph. Newbery's condemnation of the postmodern establishment brings us to our next culprit, the advocates of silence, the curators and art directors whose formation of a popular art culture dictates what is in vogue. We see further there are references in the fifth paragraph that these people are silent about other art forms, say the representational art form. So there is some complacency, but that is not in the context of the viewers of art. So this option is overall quite distorted. A is incorrect. Option B says, it represents in some ways the need to break out of the confines of modern thought and perception, but it goes over the top, as it were, destroying everything and building nothing in its stead. Now, this is very close. This was all very good, but it distorts in the last phrase. It represents in some ways the need to break out of the confines of modernist thought and perception. This is something that we can see from the third paragraph. Postmodern art in many ways heralds a necessity to awaken from the chains of modern modes of perception and ideology, such as modernism, industrialism, capitalism, etc. Yes, but then modernism is mentioned here. So it is in a way a rebellion against the modernist thought process or ideology or perception, etc. Also, it goes over the top. We have already seen the reference. Postmodern art has gone too far in stirring controversy and shocking its audiences. So till this point, this option was very relevant. But then it says, as it were, destroying everything and building nothing in its stead. Now, this is an exaggeration. As we can see from the second paragraph, it is stated here, it has seen greatness, and it here is talking about the postmodern art movement. It has seen greatness in Leonardo, Michelangelo, Raphael, Rembrandt, and Vermeer. And to suggest that the influence of postmodernism has altogether put the arts in a bad way would be wrong. What can be said for sure is that postmodern art has gone too far in stirring controversy. So it's not that it destroys everything. As such, there's no mention of postmodernist art destroying anything in the passage. There is a reference to it replacing representational art in the last paragraph, and we'll see that in the next option. But that said, To say that it destroys everything, that's a major overstatement. That's a major exaggeration. And then again, we see that the aspect is not that it is completely bad, or the postmodernist influence on art has made art completely bad. It is just that postmodern art has gone too far in stirring controversy. So overall, we find that this option at the end of it is also exaggerated and distorted. So B is incorrect. Option C tells us it is highly non-representational in its conception of art, scoffs at all nations of the relationship of art with the good of humanity and all that it does, to the extent that it is difficult to call it art. Now, most of this can be inferred from the last two paragraphs. We can see it here. First off, it is highly non-representational. This is a reference to the last paragraph, the fifth paragraph. The postmodern, one important way in which they protect postmodernism is by ignoring any alternative. They are silent when it comes to representational art. The postmodern movement has taken on the universality of representational art with its history of 30,000 years and succeeded in the eyes of the contemporary art world establishment in wiping it off the face of the planet. So it is highly opposed to representational art, or in other words, we can say that it is non-representational in its conception of art. That is quite true. Scoffs at all notions of the relationship of art with the good of humanity. This is where it goes a little off. Then it says all that it does to the all that it does to the extent that it is difficult to call it art. We have already seen that reference first off in the second paragraph, the end. We see it here, and shocking its audience. It has gone too far in stirring controversy and shocking its audience for it to any longer be considered art. First off. Second, there's a very strong reference to postmodernism or postmodernist art being anti-art in reality. We see that in both the last two paragraphs. Shock aesthetics, which we have in the first paragraph connected with postmodernist art, is also commonly known in art history as part of the anti-art movement. Oddly, modern art historians gloss over the fact that logically, art cannot be art and anti-art at the same time. But this creates a grotesque paradox, claims Newbery. So it is difficult, it has gone to the extent that it is difficult to call it art anymore. But then this type of art, it scoffs at all notions of the relationship of art with the good of humanity. It's a bit of an exaggeration. We can see this from the last two statements, one can say. So the postmodernist movement has taken on the universality of representational art and succeeded in the eyes of the contemporary art world establishment in wiping it off the face of the planet. It has left the end point of art with bile instead of progress, knowledge, and exaltation. That said, it is still an exaggeration to say that it scoffs at all notions of the relationship of art with the good of humanity. We are talking about progress, knowledge, and exaltation. These being replaced by bile or hatred or controversy. So in all of that, we see that, yes, these are aspects relevant to the argument of the good of humanity, but then it scoffs at all nations of the relationship of art with the good of humanity. That's definitely an exaggeration. That's something that the passage doesn't quite support. Let's not eliminate this yet, just yet. Let's see if we can find a better answer option in D. Otherwise, C would be our answer. D says, it represents in the name of art what is palpably anti-art. It is opposed to the representational conception of art, and it is on these accounts, and even though it represents some kind of emancipation from modernist attitudes, a wicked monstrosity. Now, other than just the last phrase, which is inferential but true, it can be inferred from the passage, we see that everything here is directly in line with what the passage tells us. The postmodernist art represents in the name of art what is palpably anti-art. We've already seen the reference to this. We have anti-art mentioned in the second last paragraph, and also here in the last paragraph. The directors of contemporary art museums are the promoters and protectors of anti-art. And we've seen that anti-art, it has been established in the last paragraph, here and here, in the second last paragraph, here and here. So this part is true. It is opposed to the representational conception of art. Yes, once again, we have seen that here. To the extent that it has actually replaced representational art and wiped representational conception of art of the face of the planet. And it is on these accounts, and even though it represents some kind of emancipation of modernist attitudes, again, emancipation of freedom from modernist attitudes is a reference to the third paragraph. We've already checked these references. It is, at the end, it says, a wicked monstrosity. This we can infer overall from the passage, because the passage is extremely negative and extremely critical towards postmodernist art. It also says at the end, it has left the end point of art with bile instead of progress, knowledge, and exaltation. So good things have been replaced by hatred, by controversy, by shock aesthetics. And so, in a generalization, postmodernist art can be called a monstrosity. It can be called an aberration. So this is all quite true. We can qualify D. We realize that in comparison, the aspect of it being against all notions of the relationship of art with the good of humanity is an inferential assumption that we don't need to make. So by comparison, C is inferior. We can eliminate it. The best answer, the most appropriate answer is option D.